This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. NBA draft lottery. Those balls are popping up and down, and everybody from Brooklyn to California was waiting in anticipation to find out which of their teams was going to be a part of the lottery. So a lot of things happening. Oh, and by the way, you know, you've got your usual Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals going down. All NBA is happening. You know, there's still a lot of NBA talk to be dealt with, even though it's summertime and baseball is up and popping as well, too. But we're going to hold it down for our basketball heads. So let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet. To my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, Big Kahuna PNC, holder of www.shawsports.net. My brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holler back at me, Mr. Shaw. I bet you any amount of money it was hot, John blazing up here, more so than down there in Fort Lauderdale.
I don't see how that's possible, man. I'm closer to the equator, so so I'm always going to have the advantage when it comes to the heat, bro. But salute to all the fans listeners of NBA Baseline. A great show on tap, as you alluded to, man. NBA Draft Lottery, some big things popping in that lottery machine. A couple teams are extremely happy. Two of the more storied franchises, they definitely got their way in that. And like you alluded to, all NBA teams, man. Some people cost some money, by these media members who didn't vote their way. So a lot to discuss as always. Let's jump right in, brother.
Yeah, definitely. So in a little bit, we'll break down NBA Draft Lottery, who thrived, who couldn't survive. We'll also give you our take on the all NBA teams. Interesting lineup, from first, second, and the third. And then we also have our coveted Coast to Coast where we discuss the news happening in the association. So once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for tuning into The Baseline. I hope you guys enjoyed the previous shows where we gave you our analysis and breakdown of the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals. Also our breakdown of Game 7 with that classic matchup between the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards. So feel free whenever you want to chime in. We'd love to hear from y'all. Get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms: iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn, Player FM, Google Music, iHeartRadio, Roku channel. So download any of these platforms. Allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things in the association. You know how we do, and you know how we roll. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cali, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic of conversation for the breakdown, that's right, the draft lottery. So the other night, you know how the NBA likes to dress it up. They got it happening down in the heart of the city. New York. Home of the original gun clappers. And if you're a New York Knicks fan, you probably felt like you needed to come out there with heavy ammo.
Better have your riot gear ready, right?
You know what I'm saying? And it ain't even for Adam Silver. It's really for Phil Jackson, Jim Dolan, and the rest of that Knicks organization. But listen, let it be known that is the fanfare, the fandom of the draft lottery. The way it's set up, look, we can all say, could it be better? Of course it could be better. But everybody likes this lottery-like style where, if you can't win the lottery in your own state, you can't even win the Powerball, at least you can feel like maybe there's a chance that your basketball team can do it, right? So we dress it up, we put it on primetime TV, ESPN rolls out, the big dollars to build up the hype, Got our girl Michelle Beadle, Jalen Rosen, and all those guys, Jalen Rose out there, calling the shots and everything. It's big time, right? And for all it's worth, it kind of played itself out, Shaw, exactly like the way we kept talking about. You just did not want this thing to happen where the Boston Celtics, the team that is playing in the Eastern Conference Finals, winds up getting the number one pick for the draft lottery. Now, for Boston Celtics fans, they ain't complaining. You know what I'm saying? They're not complaining one bit. But it accentuates really just how egregious and bad this deal was by Billy King and the Brooklyn Nets when, when they gave up a king's ransom in order to probably get a team that couldn't even get out of the first or second round of the playoffs, bringing Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and Jason Terry and company over. What more can be said, Shaw? I mean, you couldn't write the script better for Kevin Hart to play the lead role in.
Right. I mean, it's insane that this is the gift that keeps on giving for the Boston Celtics. And, we've been looking at this. It's been talked about almost ad nauseum over the course of the season as Boston was in the midst of trade rumors and whether or not they give up this pick, what it could potentially mean, et cetera, et cetera. And it ends up being exactly what Boston could have hoped for. One day after getting and advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals, they get the number 1 pick in this year's draft with a franchise-type player or players, depending on your perspective, available to them. They don't have to look up and try to figure out a way, what they can do. They hold the top chip. And I think this is a great day for the Boston Celtics to really kind of revel in what they've done and what Danny Ainge has done by fleecing the Brooklyn Nets so many years ago. A stat went out there like with all those things that happened.
Fleecing.
Well, I mean, but it's truth because at the end of the day, I think it was the stat that was brought up that Brooklyn only won 1 playoff series after that deal. So they made the playoffs, made 1 play and won one.
But Sean, let me ask you this question though, real quick. I don't mean to like really interrupt you on this, but I am really curious about this because I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. When we use this kind of terminology, in my mind, I'm thinking, how valuable were those draft picks at that time? Not to the Brooklyn Nets, but really just in as far as the landscape of the NBA. I mean, wasn't there a point a few years ago where we really started questioning the talent that was being lined up for these NBA drafts? Like, we were reaching to some degree on franchising some of these players, their cornerstone pieces. And look, with the exceptions of the Cat and maybe Joel Embiid, I mean, can we honestly say that the draft class warranted the idea that if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you really, really, really valued the whole idea of holding these first round draft picks at that time? I'm just saying, just at that time.
Well, at that time, they were making a run for what they thought was going to be a championship. So they didn't feel like these picks would be in the lottery, let alone a number 1 pick to begin with. So they felt like they were going to have a chance to win an NBA championship. And then there's a very like thin line with this. Like they could have gotten to a conference finals, maybe even got to a finals. It's very hard for me seeing they could have even won something like that. But if they would have gotten there, it still wouldn't be worth it at this point to be paying this price because at the end of the day, it's still not over. Boston still has the right to swap picks again next year, which is just, like I said, it just never ending. At least I think if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan, so next year
it kind of feels like I don't know, like maybe putting a no trade clause on a guy you're paying $122 million for like 5 years. Oh, I'm sorry, 126. Right?
Absurd,
like
though.
this. I mean, look, Shaw. When we say Brooklyn keeps on taking it, I feel like Brooklyn kept on giving it. You know what I mean? And I'm originally from Brooklyn, but like, they just giving it up, man. Like just straight up, just giving it up. You know what I mean? Like, what more can be said about that?
I mean, you go back into it. They received the 2014, 2016, and 2018 first round picks, and the right to swap in 2017, which they obviously invoked, and now have the number 1 pick. So next year, no matter where Brooklyn is, Boston gets their pick again. And that to me is like that's the insult. So that really puts Boston in a supreme situation now. Whereas now they have the ability to draft Fultz, Tatum, Ball, whoever it is that you want to think it to be, Josh Jackson. And then now I think they're in a position of bargaining power. It was like, all right, bro. Well, now we can give you the 2018 pick from Brooklyn and then try to improve their team in the short term right now with maybe another superstar. A great day for the Celtics. I alluded to Danny Ainge. Again, hey, he held his chips close to the vest, maybe overly so in a lot of people's opinions, but it worked out for him, and now he's definitely in the driver's seat. Now what's he going to do with it?
Yeah, well, that's going to be one of the questions that we're going to ask, but just to give people a little bit, of a run with who else, where the lineup is regarding the NBA draft lottery. The Los Angeles Lakers came in second, Philadelphia 76ers third via the trade with the Sacramento Kings. The Phoenix Suns 4th, Sacramento Kings 5th, Orlando Magic 6th, Minnesota Timberwolves 7th, New York Knicks 8th, Dallas Mavericks 9th, Sacramento Kings 10th. All right, Shaw. So let's go back and kind of put this in perspective with the Boston Celtics real quick, and then we'll kind of look at the other interesting dilemma now with the Los Angeles Lakers. And I mean, we don't need to get too much into what can emanate from the choices that Pelinka and Johnson are going to have to make, knowing that the Celtics are ahead of them with that number 1 pick. But if you're the Boston Celtics, you are in the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe to some people they think that there's a level of overachievement. But if you're the number 1 seed, the expectation is that you should be here at this point. With that being said, how does having this number 1 pick truly help the Boston Celtics for the immediate now? Because if the idea is that you have Fultz, you have Ball, you have Fox, you have Tatum, guard heavy is the top of the creme de la creme. It's not like the Boston Celtics don't have guards themselves. So what are the options now that we're talking about for Danny Ainge with this decision having the number 1 pick?
Well, what happens with Boston really is that they have multiple players whose contracts are going to be up next year. And I think you're talking about what's going to happen this next season. I think their best bet is to keep it. And then to see what plays out over the next season. You're going to try to improve in peripheral pieces. You're going to try to get a big, maybe you bring Zizic over, or whatever the case may be, from Europe, and bring those guys in and see how he can matriculate through. And then you're going to bring whoever you drafted number 1 along as well too. But if you, for whatever reason, let's say Isaiah falls off the earth, and again, I'm not saying that he will, but Avery Bradley, all those guys who have deals that are going to be up next summer, well, now you get one of these franchise potentially changing guys, and then you can fill them in and see what's what. Again, I still feel like with having the Brooklyn 2018 pick, that's the pick that you now use as trade bait. I think you've maxed this out, and if you really want to take a chance, someone's willing to give you a star level player, like, listen, trade that 2018 pick right now. And I think they'll be fine with it. So for me, if I'm them, I wouldn't move it. And I think they're in a great position to move on during next season. As long as everybody stays healthy and they can get whoever this number 1 pick is to kind of come in here and contribute right away. They're not going to have a lot of eyes on them and expect it to be the guy. And at least not initially, because like you said, it's going to probably most likely be a guard, and they're set there. So he'll have, whoever that person is, they'll have a chance to learn and really kind of gauge the NBA game playing with Isaiah Thomas and Avery Bradley next season.
And you don't think that this is a risk for the Boston Celtics, who clearly this team is lacking one of two things. They either don't have enough bodies to throw at a team that's led by LeBron James, or they don't have a player that equates to what LeBron James accentuates his teams to do. Because my premise is that if you're the Boston Celtics, you're building your team to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. You at least know that whatever it is that you acquire, whatever you should get, should separate you from everyone else in the Eastern Conference, with the exception of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, what you're saying, Shaw, is that they can try and double dip, figure out a way to bring that game-changing player onto their roster while still maintaining what's a possible cornerstone player, say in a Markelle Fultz. I doubt seriously that it's going to ever be Lonzo Ball, but just for argument's sake, if you're Fultz and that's the guy, that's the dude that you want on this roster, that they could figure out a way to kind of have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the absolute best move you can make. Keep the number 1 pick this year, draft Fultz, and that's who it would be if it were me. And then trade 2018, man, and see if that's the Paul George, if that's the Jimmy Butler, if that's another big that we're not even thinking about, and they still have cap space where they can bring in a Gordon Hayward, a Blake Griffin, or things of that nature. They're in great position right now to sign maybe even 2 guys, really, or sign a guy and then trade for a guy with the pick, and then have enough cap space to make that work. And still draft and maintain a franchise-changing guard potentially in Markelle Fultz.
All right, so let's go ahead, Shaw, and focus our attention now to the team that came in second to the Boston Celtics, and that being the Los Angeles Lakers. Interesting how Magic Johnson coined the phrase, "Congratulations to the Celtics. I still hate them," and with real reason and rightfully so. You look at both of these franchises, equally. There is a period right post Mamba and this period post Pierce and Garnett and Rondo that both of these franchises traditionally always have been upholding the brand of NBA basketball. Aside from the individual marketing aspects, both of these teams struggled for a few years, but it's the Boston Celtics who have somehow figured out a way to rebound and put themselves back in the conversations of being one of the more dominant teams in the NBA, in the current state as it is. I mean, they're a legit team in that conversation. So if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, just how important is this pick for Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson?
It's massive. I mean, and the fact that they just got to keep it was a win in that of itself. So,
because they could have lost this one, to your point.
It falls out of the top three, and then it goes to Philadelphia, and then the 76ers are looking real disgusting if you're an opponent of that team in terms of all the time they would have been able to get.
We'll focus our attention to the city of brotherly love in a sec, yes.
I mean, that would have been just massive. But again, the fact that they were able to keep it puts them in prime position now. They don't have a ton of money committed next year, so they can get a guy in here, can still continue to develop some of this young talent and figure out truly the direction of this franchise. Many speculate that maybe they will obviously keep it, and then they'll try to trade some of these peripheral pieces that still have some interest around the league. You're looking at Julius Randle, D'Angelo Russell, like guys like that who could potentially be moved or packaged together, and maybe a future pick to get somebody to help them right now. And again, we all know that's probably Paul George, in which the essence and the road that they're maybe trying to look at. But again, just on its face value, just talking about what they're going to do, they're keeping this pick, at least for as far as I can see, and they're very excited to have it to try to get somebody that they think can also be franchise changing.
So let's take this for what it is, because I know the attention is going to be Lonzo Ball, who people are saying 1-2. Clearly now, I think with the Boston Celtics, this sets the standard. There is no way that Lonzo Ball is going to Boston. With the baggage that he has, I find it very hard to believe that Danny Ainge is bringing that kind of noise to Boston. First of all, Boston fans ain't going to have it, all right? There's nothing about LeVar Ball that Boston fans want any part of. Second of all, we don't know what kind of player LeVar Ball is in that kind of environment and system. More so like a California guy. Now, Paul Pierce was that guy, but Paul Pierce played in Kansas. He didn't play in UCLA. So I'm thinking that the Celtics are seriously leaning to Fultz, which means that if you are the Lakers, it would be so easy to pick Lonzo Ball. But you're Magic Johnson, and we can see how Magic Johnson is with guards like D'Angelo Russell. He ain't about these guys that have all of that nonsense hanging and floating around him. He ain't about that. So are you buying into Lonzo Ball and being even a solid number 2 for the Los Angeles Lakers?
I don't think they're looking past it at all. I mean, and not to say that it's a match made in heaven. It's a match made in the Ball's heads, if you will. And they're happy about it. All these rumors now that he's not even going to work out for anybody outside of the Lakers because that's where he wants to go. That's where he is. It is what it is. And I get all that. But I think there is some natural synergy there. Remember the end of this past season, they were playing D'Angelo Russell off the ball to see what he would be like. And he seemed to thrive a little bit better not having the point guard duties. So I think they think Ball and Russell could play together, or at least I think that's a decision that I think they'd be willing to make per se, by virtue of seeing how Russell did pretty decently playing off the ball towards the end of the season. Again, that was a snapshot. I say that's how it's always going to be, but I think they got some good insight and some intel on what that may look like. And then that's if Russell is staying, because you still have Clarkson over there as well too. Luckily they traded Lou Williams, so that has freed up some time and some space for in that guard and that backcourt position for everybody to matriculate. So for me, I can't see them looking past Alonzo Ball in any way, shape, or form. If they entertain the Josh Jacksons and the Tatums of the world, hey, I would be low-key shocked. I really would. I think Magic wants to bring and deal with Lonzo and think he can maybe form some sort of kinship with LeVar, and just for the marketing aspect. And again, the last guy that was really trying to force his way to LA in a draft like that I can remember like that was Kobe Bryant. And not to say that Lonzo Ball is going to be anywhere like Kobe Bryant, and that's not even they're not even the same type of players.
Yeah, but Jelly Bean Bryant scored a lot more points in the NBA than LeVar Ball did for his own college.
Well,
so,
this is also
so the clout. So there was definitely clout in the, you know what I'm saying, in the family tree. If we're going to bring up the Mamba.
No, it's the truth. But I mean, I there's no way really in my mind that Lonzo is not going to LA and he's going to be done in the Lakers jersey. It's just a matter who's going to be playing alongside him. That's the biggest question for me when it comes to Lakers.
All right, well, there might be a new king in LA, but for all we know, the Magic still settles out in the Staples Center. All right, Shaw. So let's go ahead and talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, and then afterwards I want to get your feel about, you know, who are the winners and losers in this draft lottery outside of the Celtics and the Lakers. So with the Philadelphia 76ers, they're in a very unique situation because, like you said, and to your point, this is a very deep and talented draft. And I think then now it comes down to, will the Philadelphia 76ers make the right decision for their basketball team? Now, we have seen them with the quote-unquote fortune of being in the draft lottery now for more than a few years. Matter of fact, they're probably building, you know what I'm saying? They're probably just stamping the Philadelphia 76ers name like every single year around the lottery thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? So at some point, this team, this franchise needs to get out of that, right? Like they've just had way too many cracks at the apple. And it's not even about the number one pick. It's just about the fact that there have been some talented players. The problem is that they don't know what to do with all this talent. Now, bearing that all these guys stay healthy, the fact that they sit in at number 3, Shaw, can mean what for this franchise, what for this team instantly.
I mean, they have another impact player, or at least a rotational guy to help build around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They have a number of directions.
Ben Simmons that has yet, you know, to play a legitimate NBA game.
Right, and they have just so many directions they can go with this. Their most pressing need probably is the 2 guard position. I mean, they really would like to shore that up a little bit. But I don't think you can take anybody. The most natural 2, I think, is Malik Monk. In amongst that crop, and they can't take him number 3. They have to go with the best talent available. I think De'Aaron Fox also fits a need for them as well too. But you just wonder, you know, him playing alongside Simmons, because Simmons is projected to be ball dominant. You know, again, a bizarro LeBron, if you will, you know, for lack of a better phrase, if you will. So, who is really a guy who can just kind of come in there and play alongside them and kind of get out of the way, but still, you know, do his thing when necessary. And that is probably the Josh Jacksons and the Jason Tatums.
Well, wait, Shaw, let me ask you something. Do you think that this Philadelphia 76ers should entertain the idea of trading down?
No, I don't think so, because I mean, I don't know what exactly they would gain by that. I still think they have a trade piece to some degree, and you know, lots of people would probably disagree with me, but I think they could still trade Okafor for some sort of veteran or some sort of other type of player that they may need to kind of fill their needs. And remember, they're one of the cheapest teams in the league in terms of what their salary holds are. So they have plenty of money, and that's why you hear like the Kyle Lowrys of the world considering and potentially coming there and things like that nature. So I don't think they need to trade down in any way, shape, or form unless they're getting
Kyle Lowry went to Villanova, so
right, yeah. I mean, he's a Philly guy, so you know, like there's some teeth to what people are saying about Philadelphia making some noise and turning some heads, and we'll talk about it even a little bit later in Coast to Coast about another free agent that might be looking to go there that might even fill their 2-guard role, right? So to me, I think they're going to go with one of the Jays here, Josh Jackson or Jason Tatum, to fill that role for them. Or again, I think the sleeper is De'Aaron Fox, maybe be a true point guard for them too.
All right, you're tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Segment of the breakdown, and we're talking about the NBA draft lottery. Boston Celtics number 1. The Celtics have not had this number 1 pick since 1980, in which that time frame they traded for, at the time, was Golden State Warriors center Robert Parrish, and then also got the number 3 pick, which they went and selected. That's right, Kevin McHale. All right, so let's go ahead, Shaw, and let's take the winners and losers here. From your perspective, when you look up and down, you know what I'm saying, the teams that were listed in the draft lottery outside of the Celtics and the Lakers and the 76ers to some degree, who do you still think are winners in this lottery?
Winners, I mean, I think there was pretty much chalk, you know, kind of throughout. I think Minnesota is great to have a top 7.
I was going to say the same thing. I again, this is a very, you know, again, this is a deep draft. And somewhere along those lines, they fall where they don't seem to be too far out of it, and they're still close enough where it's not going to force them to have to reevaluate moving talent yet. They can still use that maybe to bolster a better deal if you're Tom Thibodeau, to really help that basketball team without compromising where the picks would have sat.
Yeah, they finished finished the season relatively strong, after obviously being disappointing the majority of the year, but now having the ability to really evaluate what they have. I think some of their guys may be on the market as well too, but having this number 7 selection puts them right in the middle of things here of the lottery, and they have some options. They could try to trade down if you wanted to, as you were alluding to a while ago with Philadelphia 76ers, or maybe there is a guy that they're really trying to get, and they maybe offer some packages to try to move up. And again, I know, to much to our chagrin earlier in the year when we're talking about, oh my God, would they trade Zach LaVine and some other pieces? Potentially, again, Gorgui Dieng is the most likely to be traded if anything were to happen. But Minnesota has tons of option at number 7, and again, they just got to see who's available to them when their turn comes around. I think the Knicks, to some degree, I mean, they're fine at the 8th slot. Obviously, they wish they could have moved up some, even to be number 5 would have been a little bit better for them.
My God, you should have seen the headlines, the back page covers for the New York Knicks. Like these guys, they can't even win to lose. I think is one of the headlines and stuff like that. Just lambasting the Knicks organization and the Knicks franchise, and certainly Phil Jackson, with the comments and that he's made, certainly doesn't help the matter any. But if you're the Knicks organization, you still have to feel good that you're still in the top 10. So, it's just a matter of buckling down and seriously looking at the talent that is going to be available to you. But if you're the New York Knicks, and I know that you don't really have a lot of leverage, do you still look maybe to move up if you think that there is some talent that is worth the risk of trying to bump yourselves up a couple notches in fear that the Timberwolves or Magic or maybe even the Kings might be selecting someone that Phil Jackson is interested in?
Yeah, I think in a situation like this, these teams also always have to have a plan and a backup plan. So I think their first instinct would be to try to move up. But like you said, what leverage do they have? What assets could they give up that would entice somebody to move down to that 8th seed? And I don't know which team that would be. I mean, again, if it's a matter of a spot, then it doesn't really matter. So maybe Sacramento, maybe try to fleece Vlade into some sort of crazy deal that he doesn't like, or whatever the case may be. Phoenix, if you think maybe they're not happy where they're at 4, and I think they obviously might be a loser in this. I think they were hoping to be. I think they had the second best chance to gain the top selection. So in theory, they should have had a number 2 pick. They slid to 4. So they end up losing. So, do they just say, bump it? We'll get up on out of here altogether, and try to make a move with the Knicks. But again, there's just nothing for the Knicks to really offer Phoenix that I think is enticing. So for me, I again, New York is they're stuck where they're at, but again, it's still better off where they could be.
All right, Shaw, finally, who do you see as being a sleeper team from the draft lottery, meaning where they're situated and where the talent may lie? They may actually find themselves in the best place possible to get the best pick. Now, for me, in my take of the money, I think the Dallas Mavericks are sitting pretty good. You look at what this basketball team did, even with, a Dirk Nowitzki on the back end, you now have some really solid pieces on this basketball team that can improve. Whether or not they can improve under Rick Carlisle, I think remains to be seen. But there's some serious power forwards who are very young and who are certainly on the upside, Dirk Nowitzki-ish, so to speak, that can be kind of like, the heir to the throne, so to speak, in that position as Dirk Nowitzki starts winding down his career as a Maverick.
Yeah, I think they're in prime position. They don't really have assets in essence to move up, but they'll be able to get a nice player at that selection. I think a team that, in terms of being a sleeper, and not necessarily in terms of where they'll pick in terms of talent, but be willing, like, they might be willing trying to blow it up is the Detroit Pistons. So you might hear, the names of Drummond and Reggie Jackson and all those things, like, hey, we'll give you this and our pick if we can get to this spot. So that's a team that I'd be looking at, like, keep an eye on them per se. And I think I'm always going to give some credit to Pat Riley. He's right on the cusp of the lottery there at 14. And things could potentially go another way if he decides that he wants to move up some. But if he stays there, I'm sure he'll draft well. So I think those are some teams you definitely want to look out for.
All right. Well, there you have it. The draft lottery is complete. That means NBA draft time is also on the horizon, and certainly that will take place after the finals. But look, it makes for a very, very interesting NBA draft. We'll certainly give you our picks, our mock draft. We love doing that. We love bringing guests on to help break down who they think are going to go down as far as these picks go. And also the thing that you have to keep in mind is something can happen leading up till or even during draft night. Teams can make moves. So with the way things are set up, I think it's going to be a very, very interesting draft night, to say the least. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, The Baseline NBA podcast. And the segment on The Drop, All NBA. First team, second team, third team, fourth team, fifth team, sixth team. I feel like I should be playing hopscotch or something. I don't know. Double Dutch. What? How many teams can be? Do we want to consider all NBA? Listen.
Well, I'll tell you, as somebody who wishes there was a fourth team, that's Gordon Hayward and Paul George.
Paul George, yeah. And listen, if I'm Paul George would say, I got 30 million reasons to tell you why I should be on the All NBA team, right? Like, I was absolutely floored. You talk about Larry Bird walking out the door. You know what I'm saying? Leaving Paul George and his agent and everybody with their mouths open like some bitch. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, real talk. You're like, oh, you see that nice little clause right there? Yeah, 30 million reasons why you are going to leave now, right? Like, if there's ever a reason for Paul George, and I'm sorry, guys, if you guys did not follow what we're speaking of, the All-NBA team, while this is of high praise, when we talk about the selections of these guys. We're saying that they, out of all of the 450 plus players in the NBA, these guys are the creme de la creme, right? And obviously you can't fill up this with just one all NBA team or anything. But certainly it is an accolade that is a incentive for us, the fans, but more importantly for the players. Because in most contract clauses, there are bonus incentives for being selected on the All-NBA team. And so Paul George had an incentive clause that if he made the All-NBA team, and this is fresh off of, and I'm presuming, Shaw, that this has been predicated off of what happened to him with that gruesome leg injury that he suffered during the USA Basketball preseason. There is a clause that he has where if he had made the All-NBA team, he would have received a $30 million bonus. Yeah. Let that marinate for a moment. Let that soak in. and then
it really would have been like 70 million over the course of the entire contract.
Exactly. And then go get some kerosene, get some paper, drown that, and light a match, because that's exactly what happened just now. We just butane the whole thought. And if Paul George ever really feels like he wants to, lay his hat with Indiana, it damn sure won't be at the expense of signing another contract clause like that ever in his lifetime.
Yeah, and that's, what really sucks about this really is the media members, and I've heard a lot of them, especially through different podcasts and reading some different articles, they agonized over this because they realized their vote cost people money in this year. And not that they have affinity towards one player or the other, but they do have their biases. That just is what it is. They're supposed to be partial. But I think there is some situations where, hey, you know what? Did he really deserve to make one of these top three teams? And, that's a conversation we'll get into right now. But I think for the most part, the players on these teams are right. I don't really have a problem with it. So it sucks for PG. And it really sucks for the Pacers because they lose the one bargaining chip that they definitely had in negotiations with him. Now it almost seems like it's a foregone conclusion that he's out. He's dipping. He's gone get. Because there's no reason, no incentive for him to stay. The money was everything that helped him.
Do you think that Larry Bird had an opportunity to restructure the contract so that there is some kind of incentive for the kind of season that Paul George did have this season?
He might have bonuses in there if he did this and did that, or whatever the case may be, but nobody could have predicted that the collective bargaining agreement would have done what it did in creating a designated player exception. So, again, no matter whatever kickers Bird threw into his contract, hey, you shoot, 38% from three this year. You averaged 23 points and whatever. None of it was going to add up to what he's missing out now as a result of not making the All NBA team.
All right, Shaw. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just run right through, the All NBA first team and then what's the second team, third team, fourth team, because you alluded to the fact that you said, when you look at the list of these guys that have made the All NBA team, it's really hard to make an argument to try and just remove someone saying that Paul George deserves to, hop over this particular person. So All NBA first team. Guards, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, obviously. Forwards, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, obviously. Center, Anthony Davis, okay? Second team, Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas. Forwards, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, and then center, Rudy Gobert. All-NBA third team, guards, John Wall, DeMar DeRozan. Forwards, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and the center, DeAndre Jordan. So, to your point, Shaw, all of these guys really have had great seasons, markedly improved themselves from a year ago. Now, where it gets dicey, an argument can be made for Paul George because he really did have a good season. But was it the kind of season when you look at what a lot of these guys on this list gave you? Is it worthy of knocking any one of these guys off? And we're talking about Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and LeBron James. I mean, I'm sorry, man. Like, damn, it just sucks to be a forward right now, given the list of these guys that we just named, and Paul George has to leapfrog one of these dudes.
So I'm going to answer your question, but and I'm going to probably jump around a little bit here. I think when it comes to PG, he was inconsistent this season, and especially with him bemoaning his role and his touches and things of that nature, that wears and that grates on people to some degree as well too. Then he finished the season, in spectacular fashion.
Well, you could also make the argument too, Shaw, that the Indiana Pacers almost backdoored their way into the playoffs. Like, this was a team that was above 500, then went through a horrendous stretch of playing basketball, and then realized somehow, some way they could still get in the playoffs, and suddenly woke up and won the necessary games that they needed to become that 8th seed.
Right. So for me,
or 7th seed, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When you look at the entire complexity of the roster that was selected for all the NBA teams, the one discrepancy I have, and I understand because they said Anthony Davis played, I don't know.
Oh, you could have made the argument that DeMarcus
time.
Cousins should have been,
Well, yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting to. I think Cousins is probably the snub as far as centers because they decided to put AD as a center, and therefore he makes the first team. If you don't do that and put him as a power forward, if you will, then that bumps somebody else down, and then that bumps somebody else off, and that you have to look down to probably the third team where maybe Draymond doesn't make it. DeAndre Jordan doesn't make it.
Be hard pressed to say that Draymond Green doesn't make it, especially if he's considered as a defensive player of the year, which is the likelihood that he's going to win that award. I think Jimmy Butler might be the one who gets knocked off, even though Jimmy Butler did have a really good season, but he did taper off, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So that's what I'm saying. If you put AD on as a power forward, or no, because he's not good enough to bump off LeBron or Kawhi, right? So that's not what happens there. So the first team center probably goes Gobert. Then you bump Anthony Davis down, and that probably bumps maybe Giannis onto the third team, or Durant, because maybe you take away some stuff from his injuries, but he's still Kevin Durant, right?
Now here's
that's what happens to Jimmy Butler.
Now here's an interesting thing, Shaw. And again, I don't know what the criteria is or what it really should be. And I think a part of this issue now also comes down to something that we had talked about, off of our show with other people, is this whole resting thing, this resting phenomenon and this resting issue. Because, one of the arguments that could be made is, while Anthony Davis, when he is on the basketball court and Anthony Davis is healthy, there is no question he should be in the conversations of first team, second team, because he naturally is that kind of guy. I mean, he naturally is like an MVP-like type of player. The problem is he can never stay healthy, right? My thing is that when you've got guys that are resting players on a regular basis, does it not make it harder for you to assess whether or not they are deserving to be considered as all NBA people, even though their numbers seem to equate, that of someone that be considered all NBA first team, second team, but when we're talking about within proximity of what the next player might do or might be, do you not look at the fact that one player played more games than the other one, started more games than the other one, or whatever the case may be, as factoring to say that they're deserving to be over that next person?
Well, yeah, I think you would ordinarily, and that would probably hurt the case of KD to some degree, because I think KD was headed to be, an all first team selection without doubt, and then he missed all those games. But that wasn't due to rest, obviously, kind of what you're saying. Well, everybody on this roster pretty much played a full season. Even Anthony Davis, for as brittle as he is, he played 75 games this year. So, I mean, again, he deserves to be there for the numbers he put up, even though it was on a losing team. And that's when you get into the whole debate, oh, did this team win enough, blah, 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 blah. I don't think the All-NBA team is really about that. It really is just like, how dope are you? You know what I mean? Are you really that dude who goes out there and puts up numbers and kind of does it on both ends to some degree as well, too? So, and he definitely is. So he deserves to be on one of these teams, one or the other. I'm just mad that they skewed it or whatever. And was like, well, technically, he played 60% of his time at the center position. And that's because New Orleans just had crap at center. You know what I mean? So they're like, all right, man, bump it. We'll go ahead and put you there, even though that's not where we want you to play. We'll put you there because we're not happy with the Sheik and Ajenka and guys like that running around.
All right, Sean. Now I have one last thought or one last question for you with regards to the selections of the All-NBA team. You look at Steph Curry, All-NBA second team. You look at John Wall, All-NBA third team. And do you throw the thought process out there that there may have been a little bit of favoritism for Steph Curry to get this accolade over John Wall, given what John Wall did for his Washington Wizards and the way that he performed wire to wire through the season? The reason why I say that is because if you look at Steph Curry's numbers, it's not that it's not deserving, albeit though that everything that he did is a step lesser than what he's done the last previous 2 seasons. So it could have been that he set the bar so high that this is obviously a downgrade. And I think he was up against the wall trying to leapfrog over Russell Westbrook and James Harden, who just absolutely balled out like crazy. But an argument, I think, could be made that even John Wall probably would be deserving of second team over Steph Curry. I mean, Steph Curry was great, but he wasn't all that more impressive than what we saw from John Wall this whole season.
Yeah, I mean, if you're placing it, I definitely, I see that for sure. I'm a little surprised IT made second team. I thought he might have.
Now maybe they did this on purpose because they want to beef up this rivalry between the Celtics and the Wizards. If there's a reason for John Wall to be a little salty come next season, this is another reason to do that.
Right, but I mean that's what it is, because it's not about who had a more MVP like season or anything like that too. It really just well, who are the best players in the league at these positions this year? And I can definitely see you could have put Wall and Isaiah on that, or Wall and Curry, and then put Isaiah to 3. Either way, we're kind of like, it's tomato at that point. I think DeMar DeRozan, he slipped towards the end of the season. Otherwise, I think he was definitely headed to be probably a second team selection for himself there. But at this point, it doesn't matter. All I know is Jimmy Butler's like, yeah, boy, because he made his goal, and now he would qualify for the designated player exception in his next deal, netted him probably about an extra $40 million or so.
All right, so when are we ever going to see Kyrie Irving on this All NBA squad?
When guys like Isaiah Thomas and John Wall stop, elevating themselves to superstar status. And,
so do you think? So let me ask you this question, Shaw, because the other night I was at a party, and one of my friend's fathers, is kind of following the NBA, and he, made the assertion that Irving is better than Curry, right? So far better than Steph Curry, even though Steph Curry's won 2 MVPs and things of that nature. And we can make the argument that Kyrie Irving, the guy is just clutch when it comes to playing in big games, and he balls like there's no tomorrow, right? But listen, this guy was a first-round draft pick. This guy was a number 1 pick, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not as if Kyrie Irving sucks. He was actually putting up, something similar to all NBA numbers prior to LeBron James coming over. So I'm just wondering, what particular point will Kyrie Irving want to come out of his shell and be that guy? I'm not saying this, as a sediment of selfishness. I'm just saying that we always keep talking about Kyrie Irving and how talented this dude is. but yet we do not see his name being mentioned in these type of things. And it just kind of boggles my mind because it isn't as if this dude is not deserved. Like you would put Kyrie Irving in a heck of a whole lot earlier than you'd put Kyle Lowry. And Kyle Lowry had pretty decent numbers through the course of this season, but yet Kyrie Irving is always going to be considered the better basketball player.
Well, I think for Kyrie, it might be a little bit of the LeBron effect for him too, as well too. No matter how well you're playing, you're still kind of in LeBron's shadow, and that impacts it. But again, remember, there's only 6 spots. You know what I mean? So he has to be one of the 6 best overall guards, not just point guards, but overall guards. So when you throw 2s in there as well too, and then you remember now this is what I think this might be the first year, and I don't even know how long that Chris Paul is not on one of these teams. I think maybe for the last season he got injured. So, I mean, that's another guy that you kind of have to leapfrog, if you will, in terms of the perception, and a guy who's kind of had demonstrated a history of success and almost having a Hall of Fame career when you're talking about Chris Paul too. So Kyrie, I don't think that he's never going to get there. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's one of those guys who can definitely etch his name in there. And maybe there's some year where LeBron takes it down a little bit, and then Kyrie really enters his prime and does his thing, and again, really captivates the audience and the media members to get that voting. But again, he's one of those guys who's always going to be on the All-Star team as long as he's playing with LeBron and as long as the Cavs are good, and that's going to be his come-ups, if you will, and the fact that he's going to be playing for NBA champions.
All right, y'all. So last question for you here. Who not on this list has the opportunity to crack the All-NBA team come next season?
Well, I mean, the guys we talked about. I think Paul George absolutely has a chance, and DeMarcus Cousins, and I think Cousins should have been on it. I know he had some issues this season, but to me, he's still the best overall center in the NBA. I love what Rudy Gobert did. I just don't think DeAndre Jordan is better than DeMarcus Cousins. Even from, I'll know what DeAndre does defensively. I would take DMC over DeAndre 100 times out of 100. So I think those are the 2 names that are the biggest, not necessarily snubs, but definitely the guys that were, who could make way and get in there next season very, very easy.
So no Karl Anthony Towns?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, because, yeah, you didn't say snubs. But, yeah, Cat is definitely a guy who could be in there next year.
I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't clarify myself. I wasn't thinking about guys that was deserving. I'm talking about the people that were not mentioned or anybody that you can think of, given what they've shown you this past season and what maybe the expectations are going to be for them come next season. Who do you think has the best opportunity or chance, to crack that all NBA squad, be it first through third? That was kind of my sentiment about where it was I was going. I didn't want it to just be specifically focused on the snubs.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then, going by that, it is still those 3 guys per se. Cat is probably definitely going to be making a push, for that award as well too. I mean, that honor, if you will. So I can't really think of anybody outside of that who's definitely going to get in there. But I think those 3, they lead the list. And, if you want to throw a sleeper out there, a real sleeper is maybe Joel Embiid.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew it. I've seen this out. Great minds think alike, dude. Great minds think. I was like, the process, you know what I'm saying? I shall proceed.
He could. Yeah, if he stay healthy.
If we're talking about the Philadelphia 76ers, and listen, we're not toting any horns or trying to say, oh, watch out for but yes, look out for the Philadelphia 76ers, because the way Joel Embiid has established himself, given the incessant injuries that he suffered, if he stays healthy, he's another guy that we can throw in that hat like we talk about with Anthony Davis. And the guy has got MVP-like type potential, and he's shown it in the course of when the Philadelphia 76ers were actually in the playoff hunt. So, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, there's possibilities for those guys as well too. It'll be a hard sell, because it's all going to be predicated on what the Portland Trailblazers is going to do for next year. But those are the kind of guys, given, listen, after what they shown me in that first game against the Golden State Warriors, how they can explode. They're liable to, if that's going to be the way that Terry Stotts leans on this team moving forward, you can expect both of those guys neck and neck trying to knock somebody off of this all-NBA squad.
Absolutely. And the final note I'd say is, long shot coming way from the back is if Mike Conley is a guy, if he decided to go just absolutely ham and Memphis kind of turns a corner to some degree, and he gets them to like a 55-win season, and he's a guy who kind of goes nuclear like Isaiah Thomas did this year. I think he has that type of potential, but he just plays so controlled sometimes and is not. And I won't say he's not a killer, but he's just not always looking to get himself involved offensively and score at that level. And that's what it really boils down to. He's going to have to elevate his game, which seems a little bit unnatural. But I think, again, if Memphis changed the way they played some, he could be a guy who averaged 24 points a game and 8 assists and things of that nature, and would be very deserving in terms of the conversation. But again, that's way from the back. So
way back. All right, well, there you have it. All NBA squad. Be sure to check out the websites that may have listed your favorite players, and we like to get a kind of a pulse from you guys. Who is it that you think is deserving to be a part of this All NBA squad? Definitely chime in. You know how to hit us up on Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast, and this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time now to go coast to coast to discuss the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. Summer League, Vegas, Sin City. 24 teams announced for this upcoming Las Vegas Summer League. Shaw, are you excited about the teams that are expecting to participate?
I am. And I think we're going to see some of the top draft picks as we always do. And they'll make that schedule and get that thing out there.
We might have to go through some channels to get LeVar Ball's son to play, but yes.
Oh, Jesus Lord. I didn't even think about that. So, yeah, I might actually be out there this year to, kind of take some of the
You gonna be wearing big baller apparel?
I can't afford it, bro. And like I said, I'm not big baller brand. I don't have those kind of ducats, and LeVar ain't giving out no handouts. So those shoes will not be on my feet, those Kobe knockoffs. So, good shout out to him and does whatever he needs to do. But I ain't got $4.95. I ain't got that scratch.
Hey, I'll slide you some Adidas tubulars if necessary. If all else fails, right?
Shit.
Yeah. Shout out to Senator Davis, Clayton Davis. All right, out in Philly, free agent speculations. There sound like there's some interest for our man JJ Redick, Red Eye Redick, going out to Philly. Are you liking that type of prospect?
I'm a little surprised that it's a rumor in terms of Redick would seem to have some interest. I really I'm shocked at that. But I think he's tired of chasing. I'm not saying he's tired of chasing. That sounds crazy. But I think he wants to get paid. And Philadelphia has a ton of money available. He provides them what they need: a shooting guard, a veteran presence, all of those things can really help this team. And again, if a certain other somebody comes to town as well too, in the form of Kyle Lowry, then you're looking at a team that could really be a problem really quickly in the Eastern Conference.
All right, out in Dallas, there are some plans to see if they can draw Drew Holiday to the fray. And I think it's about time, Shaw, that we probably have seen Drew Holiday moved on. I felt like, it is an unfortunate circumstance that he wound up, getting moved from Philly to New Orleans. Certainly did not help his growth process. I mean, this guy was a rookie of the year, not rookie of the year, but all-star basketball player at the time he got traded, and things just have not worked out for him in New Orleans, except for the fact that he was able to kind of raise his family and all things be considered, he was able to thrive a little bit playing around Anthony Davis. But outside of that, man, this is a guy, man, that I really had high hopes on. He was going to do some things significantly in New Orleans. It has not worked out.
Yeah, I think he could definitely be a nice guy in the Rick Carlisle system. Pair him alongside Harrison Barnes, and hopefully they re-sign Nerlens Noel. And you have a nice little trio there that can build upon. Holiday's been in the league a little while now too, so constitutes as a veteran. And I think that'd be a nice move for Dallas. I mean, it's not earth-shattering, but Drew Holiday is a very, very good basketball player. Obviously, when he's healthy, he's definitely one of the best out there.
All right, finally, Shaw, it sounds like the Boston Celtics are already putting preparations in place to try and re-etch their name in the air of dominance in the Eastern Conference. And if this step of already getting to the Eastern Conference Finals is not indicative of telling LeBron James, you better look out, man, to hold that throne ain't going to be on the crown is not going to be on his head too much longer. Is Celtics prioritizing to try and get themselves Gordon Hayward from Utah? That's not a signal. I don't know what is.
Well, you're 100% correct, man. Boston making a move like that, if they can get it done, they can pry him away from the cold, dead hands of Quinn Snyder and the Utah Jazz. They would be very, very.
There's two things that you don't mess with: Jerry Sloan and Mormons. Okay, so it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. We're gonna probably have to holler at our man Tony out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, gotta put the bug in his ear. Hold that down a little bit.
truth. But again, the fact that he did not make that All-NBA team, as we alluded to, again, that loses a bit of a bargaining power for the Utah Jazz. So, yeah, I don't think he's leaving, but Boston is definitely going to pull the full court press on. We already know about the connection with Brad Stevens and all of that. They're a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. And
how realistic do you think his chances would be, as for the Utah Jazz to continue to play while the Golden State Warriors are lined up the way that they're lined up, the San Antonio Spurs are lined up the way that they're lined up, the Houston Rockets, right? And then you got the Oklahoma City Thunder, which you got to believe Presti's going to do something. And then you have the Boston Celtics, right? And you've got the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm just saying, I got to be pretty tempted if I'm Gordon Hayward, if I'm thinking about an easier path to increasing my probabilities of seeing myself playing in an NBA Finals at the prime of my career.
Yeah, I think LeBron talked about it over the last couple of shows. We know what that is. That's an immovable force and object. But in theory, it's still one team, and it's one ankle injury away, from potentially, now you could be the best.
Why you got to go for the ankles, man? Why you got to go for the ankles?
Nipping at the ankles, sweep the leg, Karate Kid style. So
Rondo, you trying to get him rondoed, man. What's up with that?
But that's what it boils down to. So the easier path, to some degree, you would think could lie in the East, but here we have Kyle Lowry, who's gotten his ass kicked by LeBron the last couple of seasons, and he's talking about going out west, but now he's also thinking about going to Philadelphia too. So it's crazy. But Gordon Hayward, I think there's only two teams for him. It's going to be Utah or the Boston Celtics.
All right, well there you have it. All of the news is covered by my man Warren Shaw and yours truly, Cal Lee. Baseline NBA Podcast. Awesome show, Shaw. A lot of great topics discussed when you look at the breakdown of the NBA draft lottery, and then also a little bit more that in-depth with regards to the all NBA teams. And it's what makes this situation really intriguing is because all of these things have short and long-term ramifications as we get closer to the offseason. So while all people are fixated on this epic rubber match between the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, possibly, there are things that are kind of surfacing as we get closer and closer to and past that date that is going to predicate what could, again, and we talked about this last year, we're like, man, this is going to probably be one hellacious off season. We get into that point again, man, and it's not even on free agency as much as it is about drafts and teams making power moves to stock their teams up for this upcoming 2017-2018 season.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. You realize over the last couple of days, the fate of franchises have truly been decided, especially with the draft lottery. The Lakers really lucking out. I don't know if we even talked about it, but the fact that they didn't lose their pick this year, because if they would have lost it this year, they would have lost it again, I think, in 2019 to the Orlando Magic or something like that, too. So they end up getting to keep two of their picks instead and really have a chance to rebuild their franchise. And then obviously with the All-NBA team, some guys making that team, going to make some more money as a result of it, and some guys losing out on it as a result of not making it too. So again, this is not a slow time, despite what may be going on in the conference finals and in each respective series. There's a lot of stuff happening that's going to really impact and shape the way the NBA is going to be played in the coming seasons.
Yeah, man. So it's going to be exciting stuff, man. Exciting times. If you're an NBA fan, you got the finals, then we run right into the off season, draft night. Then you got the summer league. And then before you know it, we're already talking about training camp, rosters being filled, and an NBA tip-off right in the fall. Once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for tuning in to the show. Again, get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. For the Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.